I've been thinking on that lately, and I also started thinking on the other ways we humans use different labels to guide ourselves with. And in psychology, there's a million different labels that help us with this. But of late, I've been very interested in archetypes, which I know you have. You're like, where is this going? I know you have a super strong knowledge in this. So could we dive into what archetypes are and how they can play a role in how we define and heal ourselves?
Three are the same.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Magician.
Oh, for sure, yes.
What do you mean?
No, that was not fear, it's curiosity. So archetypes are one of the most interesting things that I have tried to understand in psychology because it straddles the border of empirical science and for sure not empirical science. And how I understand what an archetype is we are evolved animals and we have instincts. And our instincts are completely biologically based. And you can track where they arise in the body and what the evolutionary output reason for them existing are. Archetypes is an idea that was put forth by Carl Jung, and it's essentially what an instinct is to the body, an archetype is to the mind or the psyche. And the way that it's experienced is almost always as a imagistic pattern of action, and the way that we've evolved to interpret that type of energy as a character. And so there's this hypothesis that an archetype is essentially like these instinctual psychic characters that all humans have access to. And we all have access to all of them. But each of us, there's a few specific ones that are strongest in our lives. And a really clear example is the moment you give birth to a child, there is a thing in you that is activated, that is incomprehensible, that you don't have to be taught. And it's the mother archetype. You don't have to go to a class. It is embedded in all of our genes. And even men have an understanding of the mother archetype. All these characters are inside of us. And there's a great quote by, I think it's Joseph Campbell, but it's all the gods of all the religions are here inside of you right now. And I think those are archetypes.
So can you break down the different archetypes, specifically on your
For sure.
show you call out magician, warrior, king, and
Yes. So there are essentially an infinite number of archetypes, and you just have to look at all the stories and books and movies that have been created by culture. There are an infinite. Actually, the way that I think about it is there's one sunlight that can go through a prism, and then it can give you all the colors, and then those lights can be fragmented more and to give you, there's thousands and thousands of different colors. But there's a few primary colors. And depending on what books you read, there's different arguments for different core archetypes. The ones that I resonate with the most come from a book called King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. And I interchange king for queen if I'm speaking with a woman. And essentially, the way that you can think about it is there are characters inside of you. And one for sure is the ruler. And that for us is our ego. For most people, most of the time, it's the ego. The mature version of the ego would be the king or the queen. It's the part that looks at all the other parts inside of you. There's a part of you that is a magician. There's a part of you that manifests your ideas in the world. But every archetype has a shadow side too. So the dark magician is the thing that manipulates. It's the thing that will reduce other people's freedom to maximize your power. Then there's the lover. The lover is the thing that sees the beauty in everything. The lover is the thing that can walk outside and just look at a tree and start crying. The lover is...
I do that.
Yeah. But the shadow side of the lover is there's no action ever taken because everything is quote unquote perfect. And the world isn't perfect. And there are things that need to be done. And then the warrior is the thing that creates the boundaries. It's the thing that protects the kingdom. And the shadow warrior is one of the most powerful archetypes in our time right now. It's the thing that just conquests to conquest. It's the thing that seeks to win just for the sake of winning. A really interesting distinction that this book makes that I really like is we worship the hero. But they make the argument that the hero is the immature version of the warrior. The hero seeks glory for the hero. The warrior knows how to be heroic in service of the community. And the example that they give is if there's a warrior and a hero out in battle and they're trying to protect the community, the hero will go do something stupid if he thinks it's brave to prove to himself that he's brave. Whereas the warrior might avoid a confrontation now to have a better advantage later in order to protect the children and the old people in the community. the lover needs the warrior to protect its boundaries. The king needs the magician in order to manifest things in the world, but also to just not become overruling. I'm reading a book now that's called Awakening the Heroes Within, that makes the argument that there's 12 fundamental archetypes, and that's a lot to fucking dance with. The only thing that I would add is I think what's really important for those 4 archetypes is also the fool or the jester. And what the fool/jester does is it reminds us, and I need this in my life, that it's not so fucking. And every good king needs a jester to make the king humble, because if there's no jester, the king
my
can...
son is a jester.
Right, and what's beautiful is I think that each individual is a kingdom unto themselves, but then whatever the next unit is in the outer world is the next kingdom, and that's almost always a family. And it's like you give birth to the other archetypes that you need to like
Yeah.
bring order
Sometimes
into
I'm
the
being
kingdom.
way too hard on him on something that really doesn't matter, and he'll just look at me and go, like, he'll do something like that while I'm being so mean. And he does that, and I'm like, you're right. And then the last one is magician.
Yeah, so king, warrior, magician, lover, and ideally these 4 are in balance, and then that gives you...
Oh, and each person.
Right. So all of us have all of them. And what you want for a stable kingdom is the 4 are actually in balance.
Oh, I thought we were all one.
So if you over-identify with any of them, you're going to be out of balance. Like a magician, if
I feel like I
magician,
over-identify with that one, don't you?
an over-identification with the magician, you probably aren't enjoying sunsets that much.
Yeah.
You're probably stressed a lot about like, for me, I over-identify with the magician. And what that means for me is I'm willing to say no to a beautiful evening with my friends if I feel like I have to finish a work project. I'm willing to say no to like those last 2 hours of a date that you can feel like the magic would really happen because I have to be up early the next morning. I can stress about the outcome of a meeting where if my lover was in more balance, I would just have faith that if I showed up and said the truth, whatever happens is what should happen. There is a mythological motif, and I think all myths are a representation of the classical ways that our psyche can get out of balance. You know you're out of balance if there's a part of you that you won't look at. That part is probably repressed. And if that part is repressed, it's waiting in the motherfucking shadows for you to do something stupid, and then it's going to try to take the throne. And like what that looks like is if you're avoiding a tough conversation with your boss, and then you have a work outing and you get drunk, you're going to see you might say some dumb shit in a dumb way that just kind of fucks up the whole container. But it's because you repressed that part and it's just stayed in the shadows and it just waited for you to fucking go to the bathroom so you could get on the throne. A good thing that you can do if you feel out of balance is to journal and then to ask, like, what part feels unheard? And then it might not say anything, and then you might have to write down again, I am here, I want to hear you, and like really embody your queen energy. And it will probably come forward. And when it comes forward, it'll probably say like, I don't want to talk to you because you won't listen. Like, who knows what the vibe will be? And the way you balance is essentially you channel the king or queen energy and you hear what this part has to say and then you make a compromise. Like maybe the warrior in you wants to go fucking shit on your boss's desk. That's not the way. But that's because the warrior got repressed for a long time. But the compromise could be like, hear out what that part of you has to say. And then you can make the compromise of, okay, I'm going to write this email to my boss. I will address this, this, and this, and I will send it Monday. Will you please relax? You know, and then that part will be like, we'll see if you do it. You know, and then you do it.
Yeah.
And this is a constant dance. Like, I really do believe, or the model that I use is my psyche. Have you guys seen the movie Inside Out? I think is what it's called. It's the children's movie. I think I might be saying the name wrong. It's the one where there's the 5 emotions.
No,
oh my God.
That sounds great for
You
children.
guys have...
It's a children's
yes,
movie. That's
and
amazing.
it's an amazing psychological movie. I think it's called Inside Out.
Okay.
Fascinating. But I really see my psyche kind of like that, but I make it way more dramatic because I'm dramatic. And I see it as a huge throne room, almost like a Game of Thrones type throne room. And I have these characters inside, and like I have to keep the order weekly. Like I check in all the time, and I try to hear what they have to say, and I try to make course corrections every week. Like, for example, the last couple of months, I've really wanted to bring forth my warrior more. And so I've been working out more and I've been doing kickboxing. And like, that was a result of me hearing it out. Like, I could feel it. He was pissed. He was like, you are not fucking honoring me, you know? and then started to punch shit, and I feel a lot better.
Those are great ways to balance. Yeah, I feel it does go in line too with all the other ways that we can label ourselves.
Feminine and masculine, so many labels.
Totally, yeah. Alpha, omega, and even the relationship styles you were talking about, and of course hormones. Because I mean, you're talking about the warrior, who's obviously plays a very masculine role,
sure.
and you're needing to do stuff that brings out testosterone.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about this now, but I'm willing to bet that if we had people now who academically researched this and had the budget, you could probably find that the major archetypes correspond to major hormones.
100.
Like the lover, for sure, oxytocin. The warrior, for sure, testosterone. A king energy might be dopamine, who knows? But I'm just saying that Jung did his best without having the type of biological knowledge we have now. A part of me is really excited to so this is kind of a tangent, but I thought a long time about going and getting a PhD, and I decided to not get a PhD because the funding depends on you getting grants from either rich people or the government or some type of military. And that's like all the funding for science and our culture is dependent on other people giving these people money. And so it really dictates the type of research that gets done. One of my aspirations is to be able to run a business well enough that I can fund my own research. And like a part of what I want to research is like, what is the physiological basis of archetypes? And this is just an idea that's kind of coming to me now, but that the major hormones that we have coursing through our body, I think correspond to the major archetypes.
Fuck yeah, I love that. It's, you guys know. You guys know.
And then how about how they come into play with our lovers?
Yeah. How can you answer that more specifically?
Archetypes specifically, maybe.
So like a magician tends to try to fix their lovers, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Right? So,
Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, so how can we
Identify theirs, maybe?
Well, yeah, but also like what does each do in relationships, and how can we balance them more in relationships? Would it be the same tools, or?
Yeah, so my invitation here is
I guess awareness.
It's the magician in you that wants to ask the question.
Yeah.
And my invitation would be authentically open your heart, share your truth, and just pay attention to what happens, and just don't overthink it.
Which is the lover?
You're overthinking it. So all of these are models. All of these are maps. And the thing that a map is doing for you is it helps you get to a destination. But at any moment on the journey, you're actually already in the forest. And so the maps are cool, but
Stand in the gray.
right. Just like put the map in your backpack and be in the forest. And like when it comes to relationships, like try not to overthink it and just be. And truly the way forward is do whatever practice you need to do to cultivate awareness in the moment, which that might be to meditate or to eat mushrooms or whatever it is. And then if you have awareness, then just pay attention to what happens inside of you as you're interacting with your partner. And then just speak the truth. And I think it's that simple.
You know what's coming up for me when we're talking about this is for women, and why Jake's probably having a hard time with this, why all women probably listening are like, yeah, but we have a clock that we're very aware of, even though we pretend we're not.
Yeah.
And men don't really have to think about that.
Yeah.
And when we have to think about that, that means we don't have time to fuck around, like just see if this partner works out.
Yeah.
Like we need to know now, figure that out, quick, get on with the next if that's not going to be what we want. Plus, if we have, maybe we have kids and we don't want to introduce these people into their lives. There's all
totally
these different variables that come in, and especially as a protective mom or as a woman with a ticking clock or whatever, you don't want to waste that type of time just figuring shit out. Because figuring shit out and standing in the gray or standing in the forest and being just in the moment feels scary.
So I have a good story here. I recently got out of a relationship and I started like dating again. And it felt like I had an 8-month relationship in 11 days. And the reason it happened was because we were blisteringly honest right away. And it led to a very uncomfortable conversation after 11 days. But I've now completely worked through that dance. And like I now have more clarity about what I want. And so the invitation here is everything that you just articulated.
Do you recommend that, or you don't?
I recommend that.
Because I'm blistering honest.
Right.
Is that what you called it?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the implicit thing that I hear in what you're saying is that there's most people's strategy when they're in that situation is to try to strategize about how to be in order to as quickly find the right dance because there is a clock. My approach or my recommendation, and I'm a 28-year-old guy, so I might just fucking ignore me, but